Good afternoon. Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley. With me is the Division Chief of our Consumer Protection Division, Chris Barry-Smith, and on my left is Assistant Attorney General Scott Schaefer, who has been the primary Assistant Attorney General on many of the matters that culminated in today's agreement with Myspace. I want to state at the outset that we are pleased today that many of my colleagues who were in New York today with Myspace announcing this agreement. Particularly, I want to give credit to Attorneys General Roy Cooper from North Carolina and Attorney General Blumenthal from Connecticut, who were the co-chairs of the executive committee on this matter. Massachusetts has been on the executive committee of this matter involving social networking sites. When I took over as Attorney General just about a year ago, I made it a high priority and was delighted that, among others, Scott Schaefer, but primarily Scott in the division, had been working diligently both on big picture and small picture. And I want to talk a little bit about the design changes. But first, let me note that this agreement, I believe, is groundbreaking in many ways because it is 49 attorneys general, 49 states, and it is far-reaching, it is forward-looking, and it depends upon a mutual cooperation going forward between the Myspace folks and their staff as well as attorneys general in a way that for law enforcement is somewhat unprecedented. I think one of the reasons it's so important is to understand that the technology and the trends on the internet, like social networking sites like Myspace and others, move so quickly that in some ways it is always ahead of law enforcement. It's ahead of parents. Sometimes it's even ahead of kids. And we felt, although we had serious concerns about where some of it was going, that the talks that we've had and the work that we did resulting in this agreement, I think, is a win-win both for Myspace, because I think they've acknowledged some of the problems with their sites and their willingness to cooperate to make some changes going forward and to work with the attorneys general is an indication that child safety comes first. Doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen in many of the areas that we investigate and sometimes bring suits or prosecute. But I am hopeful that the agreement of principles reached here today, the agreement on certain of the changes that Myspace must make, and including the agreement that there will be a cooperative committee, both of law enforcement and of Myspace, to look at some of the age verification, identity verification techniques that we think are so important to keeping kids safe, is a huge step forward. We're going to continue to be diligent on it, but now we will do it in a cooperative way with Myspace as opposed to an adversarial way. As chief of the child abuse unit in Middlesex, certainly starting in the early 1990s, we saw how the advent of internet, social networking sites really created not only huge advantages for communication among teens and ways in which they could express their creativity, but we also saw a huge advantage for perpetrators to enter onto the site, keeping their identities anonymous, to seek out virtual and real victims, both on-site and with matchups off-site. And our ability today, I think, to recognize this and to come to this agreement is very hopeful in my view, as someone who realizes how difficult this may be. I want to add something that my colleagues added today, that this agreement also has to include the education of parents and kids about the dangers on the social networking sites, that part of this agreement includes the need to educate parents as well as kids. We are in a brave new world on this. We're not going backwards on it, and we need to tackle it together, as I think this agreement is a very good first step. Here in Massachusetts, we've begun our cybercrime initiative. We're working with our criminal division to make sure that police are educated. We're working with the legislature to improve the tools we have to go after predators. But I think today's agreement is a huge step towards safety. Particularly, there were three things that prompted this work of the attorneys general with Myspace. That we found that potential child predators were using the Myspace website to locate victims and to communicate with them. Secondly, we found that users themselves were engaging in explicit and inappropriate sexual discussions with children or posting sexually explicit or violent images and content that was accessible to children, but often hard to track and often hard to hold those who did it accountable. And the third concern was that individuals were using the Myspace website to post violent or inappropriate images or content as a means of bullying and threatening children. I want to stress that one of our concerns is not just the sexual predator or the sexual content, but the use of the internet in a way that had not been previously available to those who would bully or harass, particularly even at the junior high level.